Welcome to my review of Jeremy Clarkson's latest book, which is To Roost. Now, if you're a fan of Clarkson, you'll know his sharp wit and unapologetic opinions are as much a part of his writing as they are of his on-screen persona. Now, while the first half of the book doesn't really break new ground for long-time fans, by chapter 6, Clarkson's insights and humour does shine through, and we will get into that. But first of all, would you consider subscribing to the channel? Let's get into it. Let's start with the red tractor debate. In chapter 6, Clarkson tackles the red tractor symbol on British food, questioning whether it is truly representing hard-working local farmers. Jeremy states that it's become almost useless, and now he suggests that his own diddly squat farm logo could rival it. Oh, I love a rivalry, don't you? He says that his logo could actually represent farmers who simply want to get on with the work without interference from eco-activists and bureaucracy. I mean, it's a sharp commentary on how the woke agenda, as he puts it, may inadvertently harm the very people working tirelessly to produce our food. Another chapter in the book, called Das Tractor, highlights the cost of food. So this particular chapter in the book expresses the pressing issues of food prices, a topic that Clarkson addresses with his usual flair. He opens with this extract from the book. Every government in the civilized world knows that food must not be too expensive. Well, I wish that were true. If people cannot afford to eat, it is a known fact that within days, or maybe hours, as he puts it, everything will go full zombie apocalypse. This is why a standard-sized tin of baked beans is just £1.40. Bear in mind during this next part that you can get budget beans for 50 pence. Okay, so it's hard not to agree with him as he breaks down the cost behind a £1.40 tin of baked beans. He describes how the cost of fuel for the tractors isn't factored in, along with the transportation, factory production, labelling the product, getting the lorries to the farm, to the shops, and from the shops to the consumers, with marketing as well, and much, much more. And yet by the time the farmer sees any profit, what I'd like to say is profit, they're left with mere pennies. Okay, so Clarkson highlights how farmers protesting against the government policies is something that needs to happen in order to be heard. But the truth of the matter is that it gets dismissed by the media, which paints them as extremists. I mean, he explains it in the book. It is a raw yet honest look at the disconnect between those who produce our food and the power that be. Now let me just read a quote from page 79 just to emphasise that point. So in the chapter of Das Tractor, he says, and I quote, it's near the end of this, so page 79, "And in all of the world's elections this year, we're told it's a battle between the centrist left and the far right. This is the new racism and misogyny catch-all badge of disgrace handed out by the left whenever they think they might be losing a debate." Now that's something to bear in mind here. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter that caught my attention inside the book, which is called Metal Box Nation. Okay, so this particular chapter is a dig at architecture and culture in Britain. Let me explain. One of the most thought-provoking chapters, Metal Box Nation. It dives into how modern architecture is losing its soul. I couldn't agree more. Whilst he was stuck in traffic near the Natural History Museum, Clarkson contrasts its grandeur with today's trends of using shipping containers for homes and for businesses, for cafes, all sorts. He literally jokes inside of the book about how you're likely to find a container cafe even on a remote coastal path. But there's one thing inside this book. Clarkson's concern is cultural. As we default to convenience, he highlights a much broader point. We risk losing the legacy of building great structure, our cathedrals, the palaces and castles that he explains. I couldn't agree more with him because over the past 12 months, which I haven't told anyone, is that I've been filming a video based on architecture and how we're actually losing this, and he picked up on that through his new book. I was really happy to read that chapter, knowing that we were aligned with something. You'll be able to find that video very soon on the channel. Now, if we keep relying on quick and cheap solutions, the UK could end up looking like a glorified storage yard. Architecture really does matter. It is a testament to who we are and where we have been. Now the next chapter that I'm highlighting had me in absolute stitches. He talks on cricket and sweet revenge. Now in a slightly lighter moment in the book, Clarkson hilariously roasts cricket, calling it a sport in the same way that gardening is a sport, or hoovering. Sorry sports fans. Jeremy recounts his dislike for the game since his school days, as it was compulsory for them back in the day to take part in, and now as a farmer with trees used to make the cricket bats, he finds sweet revenge in profiting from the sport that he loathes. He was told that a certain type of tree on his land were the type that they used to make cricket bats out of. I can see him getting a light bulb moment here. And now finally, after all these years, he gets his revenge on cricketers by hurting them in the wallet. Oh, it's classic Clarkson. When I read this part in the book, it was blunt, humorous, and oddly satisfying to read. Anyway, now for a more serious note. So Clarkson inside this book actually talks about farming versus net zero. Oh, this could be a sore subject. Well, it's not my words, it's Clarkson's. Now the latter chapters grapple with the idea of profound issues, the impossibility of achieving net zero without major sacrifices. Now Clarkson actually explores the dilemma that a lot of farmers face. You cannot grow food without emitting carbon dioxide, and yet efforts to combat climate change often harm the very soil needed for farming. It's obvious that he's going to have a go at Greta Thunberg and her statistics about soil storing 15,000 billion tonnes of carbon, and explains how ploughing his field releases it as CO2. If farmers avoid ploughing to stay green, they need chemicals to kill the weeds, which is what ploughing kind of intends to do. It turns the soil and the weeds get buried, therefore you don't need to use the chemicals. Although now, where they're not allowed to do that, they have to pick the alternative, which is using the chemicals to put in the soil. Then this is another environmental issue. As Clarkson puts it, it is a multiple choice world of no right answers. Now I couldn't agree more, because importing food from overseas only adds to the emissions, raising the question, are we solving climate change or just shifting the problem? Now in the book he nurses his worries by saying that we will have to choose between eating food or polluting the earth just a little each year in order to survive. Okay, let's move on to the best pub in the world. Now in the last chapter of the book he talks about buying his pub. Now I did a video at his pub which you can find in the description linked below, so make sure you go check out that video after you've watched this one. But he says how he was told that it would be way too expensive, really hard to run, be more painful than what it's worth, but how he wanted to solve the issue of being able to sell the products of his farm at a location. If you've watched the show, you'll know about all the battles that he's been having with the council and how he's not allowed a premises to sell his food. So this was a great alternative. And to have the idea in the back of his mind to spend time with his family at their own private table, to be able to have dinner all together with the grown produce from his farm and to drink the beer made from his own barley. Might I add, it is a cracking pint. But it is something that leaves room to really think about the importance of farming. At the time of recording this video, in the UK, under new tax laws, they are decimating farmers and governments are looking to buy up the land to put more solar panels on it in the name of net zero. Now, in my opinion, if you're allowed one these days, is that by looking at what happened in Germany and how they turned off all of the coal plants and power plants a few years ago, a short time showed that they needed to turn it all back on again because being green didn't work. It literally costs billions of pounds to get the turbines up and running, the solar panels piled up and wired in, the land that it will be placed on will be ruined. Okay, they paint the picture of all the positives and why it's so beneficial to have all of this green energy, but have we looked at the negatives? You see, the negatives to net zero far outweigh the benefits of what it could produce too. Birds will be killed, land will be lost, local farmers will be gone, our food will come from abroad which have less regulations on the foods that we consume today, which means the country's health is at risk. It will create more greenhouse gases producing solar panels than that of a tractor ploughing a field will. And the wind turbines last no longer than 10 to 15 years before they become unfixable and are left abandoned. Case in point that I've seen in the sea abroad, showing a lot of the turbines not even working. Now the chemicals released into the atmosphere to make these green ideas are more damaging than a cow farting. Jeremy is right, it's not a yes or no choice, it is a which one do we choose basis, and which one is right for our species. It worries me that the eco-warriors think that this is a good idea when plainly actually, when we think about it out loud, it's not. Now, do not get me wrong here. I'm not saying that climate change doesn't exist, because it does. I'm saying that it's not as bad as what they say it is, and how we should focus putting our money towards working on better technology with less polluting tractors that will farm the land instead. Robots like ChatGPT to tell us solutions of how we can be better with producing crops efficiently, to chuck money at scientists that will show us solutions of how we can adapt to the weathers that we are facing today, to explore how we can capture carbon with planting more trees in the fields, and if they insist of using solar panels, to put them on the top of existing large spaces. Think of undercover car parks or big supermarkets where they can literally put all of these solar panels, yet they choose to put it in the countryside in fields. Why? Instead of losing the countryside altogether and taking away livelihoods of those who are already under immense pressure from producing good and healthy foods that we have on our dinner plate every single day, why are they doing this? This is an opinion video. I'm not saying any of these ideas are good. I'm saying that we could all collectively become better by helping each other and learning from one another, and to fight for what is right by the human species. Let's not compromise our food, but to compromise how we farm and what we can do to keep it alive. Buy locally sourced food. Stand up for farming. Back British. Do what is right, and by God, do not let the people in suits dictate to us how we should be doing anything that they simply do not understand themselves. Under new tax laws, farmers face increasing challenges with land often sold for solar panels in the name of net zero. Clarkson critiques this, pointing to Germany's costly reversal of green energy policies. Solar panels and wind turbines may sound eco-friendly, but their fabrication and short lifespan come with hidden environmental costs, and all at the expense of us, the taxpayer. If the cost of living increases yet again, we could be £500 worse off a year, and then in a few years' time, the green energy will shrink all of the bills by almost 300. I mean, do the math here. You are still £200 worse off. Insert the clip now.
We set that out for 2030. It was an independent set of modelling that said that bills could go down by up to £300. And what's important, Susanna, is that the report I referred to last week from the energy system operator confirms that not only is our target achievable, but it will lead to lower costs of electricity. And this is really, really important. It is the big change that I was talking to Richard about. It's a change that renewables are now cheaper than fossil fuels. And what's crucial also is it's not just cheaper, but it gives us more security.
Okay,
because what we saw when Russia invaded Ukraine was prices going through the roof.
Yes.
And that is what cheap, clean renewables avoid happening.
Okay, so in 6 years' time, our bills will go down by £300. How much are they going to have gone up by that point?
Well, it's not about bills going up as a result of our plans. The truth is, Susanna, is that because we don't control fossil fuel markets, so when geopolitical events happen, what happens is that, you know, for example, Russia invading Ukraine, prices go up, and then not just for imported gas, but for North Sea, let me just finish the point, North Sea gas as well. So what we're doing is transitioning to cheap, clean power that we control. You see, we set the prices, for example, of offshore wind.
Do you know what? I don't even know where to start with Ed Miliband. Anyway, my final thoughts then. Clarkson raises vital questions about balancing food production, environmental concerns, and cultural preservation. While I believe that climate change is real, I agree with his call for smarter solutions. Instead of vilifying farmers like they all have been, we should invest in better technology, like more efficient tractors or scientific advancements in sustainable farming. This isn't about denying climate change, it's about approaching it pragmatically, ensuring we protect our food supply while reducing harm to the planet. Support British farmers, question policies that threaten livelihoods without offering viable alternatives, and most importantly, let us ensure that those in power truly understand the impact of their decisions. Clarkson's To Roost is more than a collection of essays written for his newspaper column. It is a rallying cry for common sense in an increasingly complex world. Thank you very much for watching. Please go check out the time that I visited Clarkson's pub and how we should be mindful about what it actually takes to grow food that you eat off of your dinner plate. And for any car fans out there, I will also link the time that I took out the McLaren 620R and the Aston Martin Vantage at Silverstone. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in another video very soon. Cheers.